We are constantly bombarded by the expression in the tradition of the Arabs about almost any subject imaginable. What traditions did they actually have?
The Muhammadan Arabs, followed by the millions who were forced to convert to Muhammadan Islam, have been able, through 1400 years of domination and subjugation of other peoples, to perpetuate many historical, theological, and linguistic falsehoods that they succeeded enormously in deceiving humanity with about their actual traditions and achievements. They have been and continue to beguile most human beings, whether so-called believers or unbelievers, into accepting the following unsubstantiated and totally uncorroborated falsehoods as facts. One of the most important achievements of Arab propaganda has been their totally manufactured ancestry that Muhammad and the Muslim exegetes created for the pagan Arabians and hence for themselves. That Abraham and Ishmael were the progenitors of the Arabs. That the pagan Arabs knew the story of the migration of Hagar and Ishmael to Arabia. That the foundations of the Kaaba was built by them as the first house of Allah. That the Kaaba was actually the first temple of Allah preceding that of the Temple of Solomon. That the earliest descendants of Ishmael knew about monotheism but turned pagan over the centuries. That it was Ishmael who was to be sacrificed by Abraham and not Isaac. That the concept of Islam, which is the belief in one God, belongs only to the followers of Muhammad. That Muhammad was bringing back to them the original monotheism of Abraham that they had forgotten for the earlier 2,500 years. That Muhammad was a prophet. That Muhammad is the last prophet of Allah. That Muhammad was the victim of repeated aggression and not the other way around. That Muhammad was the representation of the most perfect male human being to be emulated to the letter by his male followers. That Muhammadans conquered other peoples in self-defense. That they treated their minorities with justice and fairness. That they brought civilization and knowledge to the conquered peoples. That Muhammadan Islam loves all and encourages all types of learning. That Muhammadan Islam must become the only belief system for the whole of humanity since it is superior to all other beliefs. Ladies and gentlemen, so-called believers and unbelievers, as we have demonstrated in over 140 chapters so far, that not a single one of these claims can be shown to be true. We have disproved each and every such mendacious claim based entirely upon the Arabic of the Quran and Hadiths, as well as on the records of Muhammadan Muslims themselves. I am able to address, in the sequence I have recited them yet again, only the most important claims due to our time restraints, while the others you can listen to in our earlier chapters. There exists no oral tradition among the pagan Arabs mentioning their knowledge of their lineage to either Abraham or Ishmael. In fact, these two names, as well as the names of Hagar, do not exist in the roster of names recorded by the earliest hadiths. Listen to chapter 68. It was Muhammad who did his best to create a connection between his birth line to that of the Israelites that started the whole train of falsifications, perversions, and distortions of history and reality on the move. The Torah has no knowledge of and does not mention the names of Allah, Arabia, Arabs, or Mecca. It was Muhammad and his followers who, out of desperation, actually concocted these stories to bring themselves in line as inheritors of the traditions identical to that of the Israelites and the Jews, thus sanctifying themselves by association. Chapter 47 gives more details. As we have demonstrated in several of our chapters, no human being can ever show any connection regarding Abraham and Ishmael having been to the valley of Mecca or erecting the foundations of a pagan temple there. If, as alleged by the followers of Muhammad, that their ancestors knew about monotheism, why then did they turn pagan for 2,500 years only to be awakened by Muhammad's alleged revelations? How is it possible that they had a complete case of national amnesia? Why, on the other hand, were the Israelites and the Jews able and willing to carry, against all odds, the light of monotheism all these 2,500 years to be stolen from them by Muhammad? Where are the records, whether oral or written, that assert that it was Ishmael and not Isaac who was going to be sacrificed by Abraham? Listen to chapter 49. If Muhammad were a prophet, what then did he prophesy? Especially since the Arabic of the Quran asserts that he did not have to, and hence he did not. Our chapter 9 addresses this issue. As we have shown in our chapter 28, the word used in the Quran, khatim, was deliberately mistranslated and misrepresented to mean last, which its original meaning is to authenticate. In numerous chapters and based entirely on his biography and the hadiths, we have destroyed the myth of Muhammad's perfection, that he was without a shadow of a doubt a hate-mongerer, a warmongerer, a racist, a pathological liar, a sexual predator upon young women, a coward, a mass murderer, and in one word, an ungodly creature. It was Muhammad who attacked and insulted the religion and beliefs of his own tribe of Quraysh in the first place. It was he who consigned all of their so-called unbelieving ancestors to eternal tortures in hell. By any standard of logic and morality, he was the aggressor. This methodology of aggression was later visited upon all of the pagan Arabs, the Judaized Arabs, and last but not least, the Christian Arabs. All the above were the aboriginal and natives of Arabia and not foreigners. They had lived in relative harmony for centuries until Muhammad's rise. It was Muhammad and his followers who finally eradicated by slaughter, forced conversion, enslavement or exile most of the Judaized Arabs and all of the Christian Arabs from the Arabian Peninsula, their homeland. After his followers had finished subjugating Arabia, they turned their attention towards other countries to conquer, subjugate, slaughter, convert and enslave, from modern Iraq to India and China, from Syria to Egypt and the whole of North Africa, from Spain to Italy, from Iran to Armenia. Each and every one of these conquests was not in self-defense, as they falsely claim, but purely based upon aggression and plunder. It is a blatant and demonstrable lie that the Arabs brought any civilizing influence to any of their conquered peoples. In fact and reality, it was the other way around. There was no civilization in the Arabia of Muhammad's time to speak of. There was no central authority, no unifying king, no administration, no writing, no documentation, no unified army. In short, nothing whatsoever that can characterize the Arabs as a civilization. On the other hand, the followers of Muhammad conquered many of the most important civilizations in the world at that time. The Byzantine Christians, the Sassanid Persian Zoroastrians, the Coptic Egyptians, the Hindu Indians, and the Chinese. It was from among the converts to Muhammad and Islam, of these conquered peoples, that the most important luminaries in science, philosophy, and literature came to the forefront of the world scene. Very few of them were of pure Arab stock. Our chapter 21. As we have demonstrated in several chapters, and especially chapter 69, that the word ilm, meaning knowledge, pertained only to the science of religion and not to the general sciences that we are deliberately but falsely led to believe by the followers of Muhammad. We have also demonstrated the obscene degree of intolerance that fundamentalist Muhammadan Islam harbors against all those who do not believe as they do, 80% of humanity, all so-called unbelievers, all Christians, Hindus, Buddhists, animists, Sikhs, Jews, Baha'is, etc., etc. In summation, ladies and gentlemen, fundamentalist Muhammadan Islam was and still is the greatest threat to human civilization, human freedom, human dignity, human happiness, and human progress. These, ladies and gentlemen, are not statements of hate or anger, but are statements based entirely upon the records of Muhammadan Islam, upon what we see them do all over the world in the name of Allah, Muhammad, or Islam, and upon their own public declarations in all forms of their news media, their school curriculums, and their Friday preaching in every mosque on the planet. Nothing we assert in our chapters or our domain is either top secret or unavailable to every human being at the click of a mouse. That is why we encounter only very few diehards who attempt to disprove our factual and unassailable revelations.